checking to see if it's live. It's showing live on YouTube. Let me check Periscope, and then I'll check Twitch. All right, I think we're live. So, welcome everybody to the Toehold MMA podcast. I'm your host Dave with my co-host Ryan, and we are here to break down UFC 253 Adesanya versus Costa. How you been, Ryan?
Not too bad. Feeling a little bit better now. I've been out of work for about a week now with strep throat. They wouldn't let me go back into work because of COVID and all that. But starting back work on Monday, feeling better now. So glad that we can get the podcast out this week.
Yeah, I mean, we finally broke the must-have curse that we had going. I think it was like 5 out of the last 6 have busted, and as big favorites, it's just been kind of crazy. But yeah, we finally got the ball rolling again, and hopefully we can get it rolling again with this slate.
Hopefully, I mean, it's not the greatest, but hopefully we can pick a winner.
So, first fight of the night, we got Cadiz Agabrimov. I'm not going to butcher that one, and Danilo Marquez. What do you think of this one, Ryan?
I think it's a kind of a crappy fight to start the card off with. I think that Marquez will probably be able to get the fight to the ground and finish it. Honestly, I mean, I don't really like either fighter on this fight, if I'm being completely honest. I think neither of them are very good. Cadiz lands 4.64 strikes per minute, but absorbs 5.8. I mean, this. I really don't feeling either way. I'd almost completely fade this fight.
I mean, it's a very terrible fight you have. Ibra, whatever. I'm just going to say Cadiz. Way easier to say. He's lost, I believe, his last 3 fights in a row.
Yeah.
After starting off 8-0 as a pro. But, he fought okay competition. He lost to Ed Herman, Dolades, and, Da Yun Jung is not bad either. But when you look at Danilo Marquez, the guys he's fought has been god-awful. I mean, I think he's coming off a 2-year layoff, I think, since the last time he fought. Yeah, February 2018. So he's over a 2.5-year layoff. In the fights I've seen him look at, he doesn't look very good on the feet. He looks to kind of clinch with you. He doesn't know what to do, and he's just kind of hoping he can get those takedowns and get the win. Where Ibrahimov, as much as he's 0-3 in the UFC, he's got a Sambo background. I think he's just going to be the better fighter in this card. And at 8.7, it's kind of a tough price to pay, but he's plus 186 or plus 165 to finish inside the distance. I don't mind him at that price, but I think he's definitely a GPP play. I don't know if he's going to be the first person. And, if I'm making one single entry, I don't think he'd be in my first lineup. But if I'm playing 5, I would have a few shares of him, because I think he can get the finish. I mean, Marquez has been finished only once, because he only lost once in his career. Yeah, I favor Cadiz just slightly, but it's very low-level MMA fight.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you can flip a coin, honestly. I probably won't have either of these fighters much at all in any of my lineups.
All right, next fight, we got Juan Espino versus Jeff Hughes. Espino is 9,100. We got Hughes, who's 7.1. And this is a fight where I really like Juan Espino a lot. As much as he's 39 years old, he has a huge grappling advantage. He averages 8.3 takedowns a fight. He lands 6.11 significant strikes per minute. Jeff Hughes has just looked god awful. He came in with a lot of hype, and he has not lived up to it. I mean, most of the fights he's been in, he's been getting beat up. He's got a draw in one of them. The only issue I have really with Espino, what kind of gets me a little bit nervous, is if he can't get that submission win in the first round. He does tend to gas. He's a big dude. He weighs more, closer to the heavyweight limit. And if he gasses, I'm afraid as bad as Hughes is, he could take over this fight. I don't think Hughes is going to get a finish, but he could get that win. But I like Espino a lot. I think you could play him for GPP definitely, and I think he's a borderline cash play. But I like him a lot. He's probably one of my favorite plays on this slate, especially for GPPs. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I like him a good amount. Espino is fighting his first fight in almost 2 years, so that does worry me a little bit. He has been uh, dealing with a lot of injuries since winning uh, the Ultimate Fighter, so that does worry me a little bit. What kind of condition is he going to be in, being his first fight back in 2 years? Um, but on paper, he just uh, has better stats than Hughes everywhere, honestly. Espino lands 6.11 strikes per minute. He only absorbs 1.11. So, I mean, the guy barely ever gets hit at all. He's also a takedown machine. I mean, he averages 8.33 takedowns per fight. Now, granted, that's kind of skewed a little bit because he hasn't had many fights in the UFC, only that one on the Ultimate Fighter, I believe. But still, watching tape on this guy, that's what he goes for all the time, is the takedown, the submission victory. Reminds me a lot of Romanov from the past card, a couple cards ago. So yeah, I do like him a lot, Espinio. I think both in cash and GPP you can use him in on this slate. Hughes, maybe if you're doing multi, sprinkle him in a couple just in case. The layoff of 2 years hurts his conditioning, and he gasses in the second or third round. But outside of that, I think Espinio is the play.
All right, next fight we got Alexei Kamura at 8,600 versus William Knight at 7,600. What do you think of this fight, Ryan?
I think this is definitely a fight that you'll want in your lineup one way or the other. Both of them are coming off the Ultimate Fighter. Um, Alexei has had one other fight in the UFC since that. William Knight, this is his first fight since, not the Ultimate Fighter, a Contender Series. Both of them are absolute knockout artists, I believe, between the two of them. They've had like 14 combined victories by knockout out of like 15 fights or something crazy like that. So basically, that's what they go for. It's the knockout. I lean Alexa a little bit more. He has a little bit better defense when it comes to striking. He only absorbs 2.45 strikes per minute compared to Knight absorbing 4.42. So I think that if the fight does go a little bit longer, that's something that definitely will add up over time. I like both of them for GPP. Don't feel confident in cash with either of them because I think that this is one of those fights that we very well could see, one guy get knocked out in the first round and score 100 on one guy and 10 on the other guy. So I personally like Kamara a little bit more though.
I mean, I'm pretty much in the same boat. I mean, William Knight kind of reminds me of like an early on younger version, I guess not younger, an early on smaller version of Derek Lewis. You know, he'll be losing the fight, he'll be getting taken down, but then somehow he rises from the grave and lands that knockout punch. He's not super skilled. He doesn't look very comfortable on the feet, but somehow he just has that death touch. It just takes that one strike and he gets it. But then you got Kamura, who's going to have a huge size advantage. I think he's got like 3 or 4 inches in height and another 3 or 4 inches in reach. Both guys throw high volume. I mean, William Knight's from Connecticut, not too far from where I live. Being a hometown guy, I kind of want to root for him and I kind of hope he wins. But I think Kamura is going to be too much and is just going to be just talented enough to get the win. I mean, Kamura's never lost a fight. He's never been knocked out, where Knight, I think, was knocked out maybe 2 or 3 fights ago. So he's definitely been knocked out. So This is definitely a fight like Ryan said. You want to target for GPP. It has the best odds to finish inside the distance at 265. So definitely get this fight in your lineup. But right now I favor Kamara, but I really my bias hopefully Knight wins. Um, Next fight we got Ludovic Clean versus at 8,300 versus Shane Young at 7,900. This is another fight I feel like you're going to want a lot of exposure to. I mean, Shane Young throws at 6.1 significant strikes. He also absorbs 5 significant strikes a minute. And he is just, he's one of those guys that just moves forward. He's throwing, he's brawling. He's, that's why he's going to win in the UFC and be probably decently successful because of his pressure and his pace. But then at the same time, you have Klein, who has very good leg kicks, especially high, head kicks, and that's what Young has been somewhat successful to. And the only thing that worries me a little bit with Klein and why I'm picking him to win, and I like him, that's making me a little bit nervous. He's taking this on shorter notice, so I don't know what his cardio is going to be, especially with Young pressuring him all the time. But I think overall, I think Klein is probably going to land that head kick. I'm and I that's where I'm leaning, but I'm not sold 100% one way or another. I just think this is a fight. It's probably going to be high scoring. Whether even if in a decision victory, I think it probably has potential to put up some points, especially if Young wins. But I slightly favor Klein. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I like Klein a lot actually. Um, like you said, he's a very high volume striker, very successful striker. Watching tape on him, I was amazed by some of his striking ability. Mostly the high kick, he does go for that a lot and lands it a lot. Um, he is taking this fight on short notice, but at the same time, Young hasn't fought in almost 2 years. So, both of them are going to have their struggles in some way, shape, or form. Um, with the layoff and then the other one taking the fight on short notice. Um, I think that this fight does have sneaky fight of the night potential. Uh, I worry a little bit that if Klein can't get the finish in the first round and a half, that he's going to gas though, due to the fact that he's taking the fight on such short notice. Um, he doesn't have the best takedown defense, but either does Young. Really, Young only has a 64% takedown defense. So yeah, I do like Klein though a good amount. I think he's pretty safe to have in both cash and GPP, especially GPP. Young, maybe multi-entry, but I'm not as high on him personally.
Yeah, this is definitely just a fight I think has potential for fireworks. It's probably going to be, I think, potential fight of the night from this card, maybe outside of the main event. But let's move on to the next one. We got Jake Matthews, 9,400, Diego Sanchez, 6,800. I don't think we have to go into too much detail on this one. I think Jake Matthews wins this fight pretty easily, but I don't know if he's going to get the finish. He didn't get knocked out in his last fight versus I can't blanking on his name. Big tall dude, Brazilian guy. But yeah, he wasn't able to put away Sanchez. I know Sanchez has been knocked out a couple times recently, but Matthews is not a knockout artist. You think he's only gotten 2 knockouts in the past 10, 15 fights or something like that. So he's definitely not a knockout guy. I don't think Diego's going to get knocked out. I think I think this is going to be a fight where it's going to kind of take place everywhere. It's going to be a lot of stand-up exchange. I think each guy will probably get some takedowns throughout the fight, and it'll make it interesting. But the only thing that worries me with Matthews is that he tends to gas in round 3. He goes out strong for rounds 1 and 2, and then he gasses in round 3. And Diego, is going to be there all 3 rounds. No matter how tired that guy is, he's coming out guns blazing. Hopefully, he has some better coaching this time. I forget who it was. Former Ultimate, tough guy is going to be in this corner, I believe. I can't think of it. So it's not going to be his holistic coach or whoever he had last time in this fight. He's going to have at least someone, I would say, more qualified to be a coach in the corner. But either way, I think Jake Matthews wins this fight easily. To me, he's a cash. I mean, more of a cash play, but I think at his price, it's probably someone you want to fade. It's surprising that he has plus 140 odds to win inside the distance because I just don't see it because Diego, he's never been submitted and I don't think he's going to get knocked out. So I honestly think this is just a fight for Matthews you fade, and Diego's probably a cash play. I think he survives. He can throw enough volume to make it competitive. He can get some takedowns, but I don't think you really need to go down to 6,800. And I mean, ultimately, I think this is not much of a cash card in general. So, but that's kind of my thoughts on this fight. What do you think, Ryan?
Uh, yeah, I think Matthews is way, way overpriced. The fact that he is the highest priced fighter on this slate, I will have zero of him on any of my lineups. I personally don't see a way how he um, makes up his price. He has to get the finish in 9,400. Without the finish, he's not going to make up that price. He's not a knockout artist. Sure, maybe it could happen. Diego has been susceptible to that in the past, but I personally I don't see that. And like you said, Diego's never been submitted. So yes, Matthew is a good submission fighter, but I don't really see that happening this fight either. Um, I think Matthews wins, but I'm not going to have him on any lineups at all. I'm not going to have him in any bets at all, just because this is one of those fights that anything honestly can happen. Neither of the fighters are that amazing anymore. Diego, maybe multi GPP or cash, but like you said, I don't think you necessarily have to go that low for cash. I think there's other low options that we'll talk about a little bit later that you can get just as well, if not better, production from than Diego. Maybe throw him in a couple GPPs if you're multi-entering, but outside of that, this is a complete fade fight for me.
I mean, I'm just looking at best fight odds right now, and a bet. I mean, I might have to go look and possibly make is Matthews wins by decision at plus 130. I kind of like that bet a lot. I
Yeah,
mean, I don't,
that's not a bad bet.
especially since he's a minus 750 favorite right now.
Yeah,
And to me personally, I think the most likely outcome is that he gets a decision victory. So I think to get plus odds at that is kind of almost a no-brainer. I'm gonna have to, as soon as we get off this pod, I'll be making that bet probably.
yeah, that's a good bet for. I know this is pretty much a DFS podcast, but if you do want to sprinkle a bet in, I think that's a safe bet to make. I actually hadn't seen that one. I saw the high odd of Matthews winning and figured that fight wasn't worth touching at all. But so I'm glad that you brought that one up. I'll probably put some on myself.
Yeah. So next fight we got Brad Riddell 9,200 versus Alex De Silva 7,000. What do you think of this fight, Ryan?
Um, I think if the fight stays on the feet, that it's Riddell's fight to lose. I think that this could be a very boring fight, though, very low scoring. Um, it's a fight that I probably won't have much exposure to at all, honestly. Rydell lands 4.3 strikes per minute. Calho doesn't really strike at all. I mean, the guy lands 1.8 strikes per minute. So the guy does nothing when it comes to striking. Both fighters absorb less than 2 strikes per minute. Calho does land 2.59 takedowns per fight, which, I mean, I think is probably his path to victory if he has a path to victory, because Rydell's takedown defense, neither of the fighters' takedown defense is very good, honestly. I think that this is going to be a fight where we're going to see a lot of just kind of laying, maybe some takedowns, stuff like that. I think it's going to be a pretty boring fight. Rydell in GPP, if you want to throw him in. Outside of that, I probably wouldn't touch the fight much unless you want to go completely off the wall and hope that Calho gets 5 or 6 takedowns this fight and wins via decision. maybe throwing him in a GPP, but I don't really like this fight at all.
Um, I'm kind of. I mean, I've kind of. I'm probably going to be overweight on Riddell. I think at 9,200, he's going to kind of be somewhat overlooked because I think a lot of people are either going to go Espino at 9,100, they're going to go down and possibly down to Dominic Reyes, and or they're going to just go straight up to Jake Matthews just because of being 9,400. And so I think Riddell being at 92, I I'm probably going to be overweight just to get some ownership leverage. He's plus 130 to go inside the distance. He on the feet he's going to pick apart De Silva. That's not even a question. There's not even Alex is a submission artist. He's looking to get you down, and when he's on the that's where he's going to do it if he can get you on the thing. But the problem is he doesn't have the greatest takedowns. Like he does have good accuracy, but he also didn't face the best of guys in the UFC. I'm looking at De Silva stats. I don't get how he could have that good. Oh, never mind. I missed one fight, but I just think Riddell has faced, I think, almost 30 takedowns in his two fights, and he's stuffed the majority of them, and there were a lot better fighters than De Silva. And I honestly think Riddell's probably going to knock out De Silva. I don't know if it's going to be the first or second round, but I think he's going to get it. And I'll probably be slightly overweight on Riddell for GPP. De Silva's not a bad punt play for GPPs at 7,000. I mean, I don't think he's going to get a submission win, and that's probably his most likely win. I mean, but I still think for GPPs for 7,000, it's not a bad play. But overall, I'm favoring Riddell a lot. I just think between the ownership leverage, his ability to put up high points, I think it's a great play for this slate, especially since I think there's going to be a lot of popular plays picking the championship fights. Next fight is the one I honestly think we can pretty much ignore for the most part. That's just my feeling. We got Zubara Turkalov at 8,200 versus Hakeem Duwadu at 8,000. Turkalov wants to get the fight to the ground. He wants to make it a grinding fight, but he averages 2.8 takedowns per fight. The problem is he's not active once he gets you down. He just kind of holds you down. He tries to do some advances, but for the most part, he does just enough when he gets you down for the ref to just not to stop it and allow him. And that's how he wins. If you look at most of his fights, I don't think he's landed more than like 45 significant strikes in a fight and decision wins, which is pretty terrible. And when you're only getting two or three takedowns, that's not going to score you very well. And I mean, but when he does win, it's usually first win knockout or submission. So, I mean, he does have the potential to get that. I mean, Duwadu's been rocked a few times. He's only lost via decision or via he only has one loss and it was by submission. So it could happen, but ultimately, I think both these fighters don't like getting hit, and I think they're going to try to avoid getting hit at all costs. And I think it's going to be a very low scoring fight. And this is, a fight in the mid-range. I just think you can kind of fade overall. And that's that. I don't want to even talk much more about this fight. I'm just not very interested in it at all.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on this one. Dowdu, I think you can maybe put in cash lineup if you want. I think that he'll get enough strikes throughout the fight to win via decision and get you 60 to 70 points maybe. Looking at his recent fights, that's roughly around what he gets is 60 to 70, which for 8,000 in cash isn't too bad. I wouldn't put either of these in GPP, but I do think Dawoodu wins the fight. Lands 5.28 strikes per minute, and has an 85% takedown defense. So I don't even think that Tukugov will be able to get many takedowns at all, honestly. Yeah, I'm kind of with you. It's a who cares fight, pretty much.
Yeah, this is just one, like, unless you're mass entering, I'd just say just take them out of any type of generator you're doing, anything, because it's not even worth having them in.
Yeah, even if you're mass entering, I'd probably have, if you're making 150 lineups, I'd say maybe have 5 of Dawadu, if that.
Yeah, it's just a fight. Just yeah. All right, enough of that one. I almost threw up thinking about that fight. Next fight, we got Sajara Eubanks at 7,400 versus Caitlin Vieira at 8,800. What do you think of this one, Ryan?
Well, I mean, Eubanks is stepping in on short notice, I believe, after fighting just 2 weeks ago. Um, I mean, honestly, it surprises me that Eubanks keeps getting priced as low as she does. Every time she fights, she gets priced under like 7,500, and I love her for under 7,500. Especially when it comes to cash. She is one of those fighters that she always does just enough that she's able to score good for cash with the salary that Draftkings gives her. She's won the last 2 fights. Um, this fight worries me a little bit with her, though, uh, just because of Vieira's takedown defense. Part of Eubanks' game is her takedowns. She lands over 2 takedowns per fight, which always helps. And Vieira does have a 92% takedown defense. So I do think that more than likely Vieira will win this fight. But I think for 7,400, Eubanks is a safe play for cash if you do decide to play cash this lineup. Vieira, I think maybe if you're doing multi-lineup, it isn't a bad play. But she doesn't really throw too many strikes. So, at 8,800, she'd need about 90 points to make it worth her value. I don't know if she gets to 90 points, honestly, just due to the fact that she doesn't really throw that many strikes. Uh, but yeah, that's kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, this is another fight like pre-tape, pre-fight. I was thinking Caitlin Vieira all day. I'm like, she should win this fight easily. But the more I looked at it, Sarge, as much as I don't think she's a great UFC fighter, she has improved. She's looked very good in her last 2 fights. And if you really think about it, if she should be, I want to say she should only have one loss in her last 5. There's whatever, not 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One loss in her last 6. The only one she really lost was Correa. Besides that, I think she arguably could have won that fight. She beat Murphy and Modafferi before that, and then she beat Moraes and Avila. So she should be on a good little stride right here. The problem is, if you look at her fights for Eubanks, she gets at a minimum 1 takedown per fight, and like you said, Vieira has very good takedown defense, 92%. She's the bigger fighter, so it's going to make it even a little bit more difficult for Eubanks to get her down. So that could somewhat limit Eubanks' scoring ability. Because if you look at her too, she gets tons of advances. They're both black belts, so that's why I have a feeling this fight. If there is a takedown, I have a feeling it's going to be Vieira getting a takedown because Eubanks only defends at 61%, and so like you said, I kind of favor Eubanks for I do favor for cash games, and then, but I ultimately think Vieira gets to win. I think she's going to be able to land some takedowns, be dangerous, potentially get that submission win. But on the feet, it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's just a matter of if Eubanks gasses or not after the second round. But she looked pretty good in her last fight. She went strong for the first round, came out strong again in the second, and got the win. I mean, this is not a fight I feel overly confident in. I mean, I like Vieira. I think they're both pretty good GPP plays. Because I think if Vieira wins, it's probably going to have a takedown or two. And I don't know.
I mean, 8,800, it's just such a high price. I mean, even if she gets 2 takedowns, and she wins via decision, that's what, 40 points, 50 points. That means that she's going to have to throw 100 signature strikes to get to 100 points.
I mean, she'd basically have to get to be like almost similar to like a Katzengano fight where she got like 82, but she needs to score a little bit more than that, but she would need to get 40 strikes, 2 takedowns, and then a bunch of advances or add another takedown or two.
Yeah.
But like you said, as pre-tape, pre-everything, I was in my head, I thought Vieira had this was fight all day, but I'm leaning, as a DraftKings play, I think Eubanks is probably the better play. I don't know how much I'll have of either fighter, especially for GPP, because I think the upside is, especially for Eubanks, I think is more limited. I think if Eubanks would have to knock her out, I think, especially Vieira coming off a knockout loss to Aldana recently. So, but anyways, that's where my head's at with this fight. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think, like I said earlier, Veer for GPP, Eubanks, anytime she's that low, I'm going to have her on my cash lineup. She's just so consistent. She'll get you consistently 60 to 70 points. So, even if she doesn't get the victory, she's still consistently getting 60, 70 points. For 7,400, I don't think you can pass that up in cash. I like her a heck of a lot more than Diego Sanchez, who we talked about earlier.
Uh, Probably, but I don't know. I mean, you're getting it. That's a big difference in savings. That's a savings of,
Sure.
600 bucks right there.
You can still make a pretty good lineup. I made my cash lineup earlier. You can still make a pretty good one using Eubanks, and still have two or three of the top fighters this slate.
Yeah. All right. Next fight, we got Kai Kara France 8,900, Brandon Royval 7,300. What do you think of this fight, Ryan?
Uh, I think that this is France's fight easily. Um, I don't know if I'll have too much of France when it comes to DraftKings outside of maybe cash, which at this point I don't have him in my cash lineup. Um, but you can put him if you want. Just I like the build a little bit better that I could get without him. I had $200 left over, so I just went up to Espedo over France. Um, I think Royville, this is a big step up for him. His previous fight, he fought Jim Miller, and nothing against Jim Miller, but the guy is very susceptible to submissions, and that's exactly what happened with Royville. He submitted him. That is not the case at all with France. Um, France has not been submitted in 6 years, so I think that is Royville's basically path to victory when it comes to fights right now. He's not good enough on the feet. He only lands 1.93 strikes per minute. So, he's just not there on the feet right now. Um, France lands 5.27 strikes per minute, has good takedown defense at 90%. So I just think that this is France's fight to lose unless somehow Royville catches him in a submission. But I personally, I don't see that happening. If you want to put Royville in a GPP, it'd have to be if you're multi-entering. Outside of that, it's not worth it. And France, like I said, I normally make about 20 lineups or so. I'll maybe have him in 4 or 5 GPP lineups, but I don't know if he's worth his price at 8,900 personally when it comes to GPP.
This is one where I'm going to be, slightly different than you. I like Brandon Royval in this fight. There's a couple key things that I think where help Royval to win this fight is one, he finally was after his last fight against Tim Elliott. He got the bonus. He was able to quit his day job because before he would work all day, go to the gym to the late nights of the hours to train, get some sleep in, do it again, and that was his. So he was never getting a solid full, good camp in every time. So now he's been training for this whole time, getting a full fight camp, which is to any fighter is huge to get a lot of extra work in. And the other thing that reason why I kind of like Royval is Kai Kara France. One thing he's susceptible to is leg kicks, and that's one thing Royval likes to throw. And I think that's going to pay big dividends. If you watch a couple of Francis fights when I believe it was Paiva, was able to land some really solid leg kicks, and it really messed with Kai Kara France. He doesn't know how to handle him. He doesn't know how to check him. And I think that could play a difference where if Royval can kick his legs out a little bit, it'll make it a little bit easier to get some of those takedowns or, weaken them and, maybe even finish the fight with a leg kick. I don't think he will, but I just think eventually, I think Royval is going to get that fight down to the mat, and I think Royval's probably going to do enough to either get a submission victory, or I think he'll do enough where he looks better with the harder, better strikes to get the decision. But at 7,300, I kind of like him. I think especially for I would say, cash play, he doesn't throw a ton of volume, but I think for 7,300, it's not a bad cash play because it's going to go to decision. And if it doesn't, it's going to be Royval getting the finish. So you have the upside there. It's more of a GPP play, but I like Royval a lot in this fight. And all right, next we're going to the co-main event of the evening. We got Dominic Reyes, 9,000, Jan Blachowicz, 9,200. Ryan, what do you think of this co-main event?
Jan is 7,200, not 9,200.
Oh, sorry.
So I think that this is Reyes' fight to lose. Most people believe that he, should have won the title his last fight. He didn't end up winning it, but most people think that he had won that fight. When you look at the numbers, they're both pretty close, honestly, when it comes to significant strikes per minute, strikes absorbed per minute. Jan does get more takedowns, but Reyes has a 82% takedown defense, so I don't think that will be a big part of this fight, honestly. Just for some reason, I just have that feeling that Reyes gets the knockout. Just something in my gut is saying that that's how the fight is going to go, that Reyes is going to get the knockout. So at 9,000 on this slate, I think that he is very safe to put in cash or GPP. I think, with the main event, he may not be the highest owned fighter on the slate, but I think that all the main event fighters will probably be pretty high. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm feeling. Jan, if you want to put him in a GPP, if you do multiple lineups, not bad play either. But I'm not a huge fan of him for cash, and like I said, I personally have that feeling, that gut feeling that Reyes is going to get the finish.
Man, I like Reyes a lot to win this fight. I think he's the better, striker. He's got very good takedown defense. I honestly thought he had beat Jones in the title fight. But then, Jan Blachowicz, he's not a flashy guy. He does land takedowns. He does land some strikes with power, but he just does enough. He's just one of those guys that he just knows how to win. He's got a ton of wins on his career. The only thing that's making me semi hesitant of going super overweight on Dominic Reyes is the fact that Blachowicz has only lost or been finished twice via strikes. Once was semi-recently against Thiago Santos. But besides that, the last time before that, I believe, was 9 years ago against someone on the regional scene. And that was via retirement. So I don't even know if he really got knocked out. I mean, he could just exhausted. I don't know, but that's the main thing. Is I think on the feet, Dominic has more power. He's going to be the quicker fighter. He's the younger fighter by 7 years. He has a height advantage. Doesn't have a reach advantage, which is kind of weird. But um, yeah, like you were saying, their stats are semi-similar. I mean, Reyes throws a little bit higher volume, but he absorbs a little bit more. Neither guy. I mean, Blackowitz is probably going to try to attempt to take down, but I think it'll be, Reyes will defend enough. It's just a matter of hopefully Reyes' gas tank holds up, because the problem is he does go full bore usually in the first round or two, and then he slows down. He doesn't completely gas, but he definitely slows down. Where I think if he can pace himself, hopefully a little bit better now that he's been to a 5 round fight, he'll know how to handle it and be a little bit better. So, but I do like Reyes. I think he can get that finish. I'm just a little bit hesitant of going overweight. I'll probably be slightly overweight to what the field is on this fight, but it's definitely a fight you want to target in general, because Blackowitz could get that finish. Reyes is, he's never been knocked out, but it could happen. But again, I think Reyes is the fighter you want to pick and be a little more overweight on in the two. And all right, now we got the main event of the evening: Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa. I've kind of flip-flopped on how I felt about this fight a lot. When I first thought about it, I'm like, Israel Adesanya, bigger cage. He's just going to pick, Paulo Costa apart. He's a better technical striker. He'll be able to move at range, use his kicks, and, just keep Costa frustrated. But the problem is Costa loves to get inside. His pressure is so much. He throws 8.4 significant strikes, which is absolutely insane. And for being that, big of a human being, like I don't even know how he cuts the weight to get down there. Like I saw a picture of him, like I swear it was like a week ago, and he looked like he was like probably 260 pounds. Like he looked like a huge jack guy. Now he's like a shredded jack guy. Like, I mean, it's just gonna be. He's just amazing, and he has 11 of his 13 wins by knockout. I mean, he's just gonna pressure forward, and if after watching the Gastelum fight versus Adesanya, it gets me a little bit worried, because Gastelum's a small guy in the division, and he was able to hit Adesanya enough and do a lot of damage in that fight, and he won, 2 rounds in that fight. I I worry that Paulo, who's a bigger fighter than Gastelum, who packs more punch than Gastelum, is going to get inside and be able to land that punch. I mean, as far as DraftKings goes, I think Paulo Costa is the best underdog to play on this slate, because I don't see Israel finish him in this fight. Even if it goes, to the later fights and Costa does tire, I, I Israel is just not like that big of a finisher. And I think, at 7,700 for a guy who throws over 8 significant strikes, even if it does go, say, 3 rounds in a decision with that amount of strikes, he's going to score well and he's going to pay over his price at 7,700. So this is, and if he wins, he's going to break the slate. He's probably going to score 120 points, 115 points. So this Costa's, one of those guys I feel like you got to have for cash, and I feel like you have to have in GPP. I mean, I do think Israel, like again, like I kind of started with, Israel is going to do enough to win. He's a smarter fighter. He's the better technical fighter. He's going to be in the bigger cage and be able to use his range and his kicks. But it's going to be very scary while it lasts. While I pick Israel to win, I do see Costa being the better DraftKings play. And I think this is another fight you kind of have to target both sides. I mean, it's got one of the best inside the distance lines at minus 190 or 195 as a whole. But yeah, I more than likely I'll have Costa in most of my lineups, and he's going to be probably pretty chalky, just to let you guys know. But I think it's the chalk you kind of want to eat.
So I was the other way initially at first. Initially, looking into the fight, I was all over Costa. I thought that he was easily going to win this fight. Israel just his fighting style is very boring to me. Um, but looking into the stats a little bit of this fight, I was surprised when I did realize that as boring of a fighter as I think that Israel is, he does still land almost 4 strikes per minute. He lands 3.96 strikes per minute. Now, yes, Costa does land 8.43 strikes per minute, which is unfathomable when it comes to someone of his size. But he also absorbs almost 7 strikes per minute at 6.84. I think that if Israel can get out of the first 2 rounds, that he easily wins this fight. I think that Costa will come out guns a-blazing for the first couple rounds, but if he does not get that finish, which he very well could, but if he doesn't get that finish, I don't think that Israel loses. Both of them, are priced well enough that you can go with either fighter. Israel, I think, is only 8,500. Costa is 7,700. So you can go with either fighter if you want. My personal opinion, though, is that Israel wins. Especially, I think more than likely the fight goes to the decision or a very late finish. But even if the fight goes to the decision with the strikes that I think that he'll be able to rack up through the 5-round fight, I don't think that this is going to be a fight like his last one where we're looking and going, God, that was just boring. He didn't throw at all. He just danced around. I think that this is going to be a different type of fight. So Israel, cash, GPP, I like Costa. I mean, very well, you could go both as well if you wanted, cash and GPP. I honestly am stacking this fight in my cash lineup right now. So, you can go either way. I wouldn't stack the fight in GPP personally, but I think that if you did stack one fight this late, I'd probably pick this one. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, definitely for cash, I think it's a fight you want to stack because if, like I was kind of saying, like if Israel wins, like he just kind of, I think it's going to be similar to like the Gastelum, like when he fought Gastelum, where it's going to be dangerous for a while, and Costa's probably going to have his moments. And in that fight against Gastelum, he threw 100 or what's called it. Israel threw 109 significant strikes, but he had 4 knockdowns. That's a lot of points, but he scored 125 points. So if he scores 95 at 8,500, that's a good score for Israel. So if he gets the win, gets 85 points, you would take that. And then Bacasa, on the other hand, if he goes to decision, he's probably, because of the strikes, because of everything, he's going to score well. So you're going to want to have it for cash, definitely, I think. And then if Costa gets to win, it's probably going to be in the first, second round, and it's going to be probably huge points anyway, so it'll make up the difference for what Israel doesn't land. So I think that's a fight you want to target for cash for stacking. Unlike the co-main event, I don't think that's one you want to fight or stack because I don't see there going to be any takedowns. They're not throwing at nearly as high of a pace, and I have a feeling if there is a knockout, it'll be more of like an early second round knockout, and I don't think it'll score as highly in a stack as Israel and Costa. And I think there's enough pieces elsewhere to, do better for a cash lineup.
Yeah, I agree. You don't want to stack the co-main. At Jan at 7,200, you have Eubanks at 7,400. You have, if you really wanted to, like you said earlier, Diego at 6,800. So I think that there's not enough options in that lower price point, 7,500 and under, that you don't have to go and stack the co-main.
So let's talk kind of quickly, about the slate as a whole. I mean, overall, this to me is a very, it's not a very good card in general, especially for a pay-per-view card. But overall, I think this is very much a GPP card. I'm not a. I mean, I don't. I mean, I do see a cash path, and I do it, and I will play it, but I'm not. I don't love it. I see there's especially the undercard. There's so many, you know, barely level UFC fighters, and they're hard to trust, and you know how they're going to do. To know that, all right, this guy's a cash play, or this, I know what he's going to get. Where you don't, and so I mean, overall, I think this is a GPP play. A lot of these fights are predicted to finish inside the distance, which is kind of odd since they're going back to the big octagon. If this was the small octagon, I would say, all right, that's fitting. But we didn't. I felt like we haven't had this many, huge favorites to go inside the distance during when they've been in Vegas as this card. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of the 11 fights are predicted to finish inside the distance. I feel like that's a lot, and I I think it's going to be probably a lower scoring card, unlike the last one where I think it was like the high 600s were taking down GPPs. I think this is going to probably be lower 600s, maybe even high 500s is going to be the winner of GPPs this week. But hey, you never know. It's UFC. There's so much freaking variance. It could happen. But what do you think, Ryan?
I mean, yeah, I like this card for GPP, but I do really like her for cash, honestly. I mean, even if you do a core of, say, Eubanks, who I feel pretty comfortable being in cash, Costa, and Israel, that's 85, 77, 74. That means you can get some of those higher priced fighters. You can get your Reyes, you can get your, France if you like France. You can get a good amount of those higher priced fighters that I think are pretty safe when it comes to this slate. So fight wise, I don't love the card at all outside of the last two fights, but when it comes to Draftkings, I think that this is a pretty good slate, honestly, for GPP or cash. Betting wise, I think it's a horrible card again. From what I've seen, I don't like many of the lines at all, just because I don't feel overly comfortable with many of the lines at all. But Draftkings, I like it a good amount, honestly.
All right, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot a little bit with this next question. Who do you think is kind of like going to be your like favorite like sneaky GPP play? Like not super high owned, but obviously not the low. I'm not banking on like the 10% guy to get the finish, but like someone in the middle of the pack that you think is going to be your favorite. Probably overweight, break the slate type guy. Who do you pick in the slate?
Are we taking like me personally, or
Yeah, you personally. Just throwing it out there.
Me personally? It will more than likely be Klein.
That's kind of what I was. That's what I was thinking, and probably the other one would possibly be Ibrahimov, Cadiz, or Cadiz Ibrahimov. He would probably be my next one after that.
He's 8,700, so I don't really consider him a middle.
Right. Well, I was talking about the ownership wise, not price wise.
Ownership wise. I mean, ownership wise, I still think Klein. I think that he'll be honestly fairly low owned when it comes to the fact that he's coming in on short notice. He's going against a fairly good fighter in Young. So I do think that Klein will be surprisingly lower owned. So I think that, if we're looking for like an edge type play, I think he's the one to go. Like I said, I personally, I don't like Cadiz. I think that that's going to be a boring fight. I actually have Cadiz as a fade. Not to say I won't have like one or two of them, because I make 20 plus signups. So even when I say someone is a fade, that just means that I'm personally not going to have much of them. I generally don't completely fade any fighter outside of maybe Matthews on this slate. He's the only one that I'll probably completely fade. but I'll maybe have one or two of Cadiz, if that.
All right, you pretty much answered my next question. I would say who is probably your biggest fade on the card, but I think we're both in,
Matthews by far.
and I think we're both in agreement on that one.
Yeah,
Especially for his price. I mean, if he does get a finish, good for him. But I still even don't think he's going to get it. But
yeah. In 9,400, he's just way too overpriced. If he was 88, 87, I'd probably have some of him. The only reason he's so high priced is due to the negative 700 or something like that money line on the fight. Outside of that, there is no reason at all that he should be negative 9,400 because Diego, yeah, his chin has looked suspect in some fights, but he he's not the type of fighter that's going to finish Diego, I don't think, when it comes to knockout. So I'll have zero of him.
all right, guys, that does it for UFC 250 through Adesanya versus Costa. If you haven't done so, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, drop us a comment, let us know what you think of the podcast, what we want to see from us going forward. And if you are watching this live, feel free to drop a question in the chat. We'll answer your questions as we're, breaking down the fights. We want this to be more interactive. But if you have, and also if you've never subscribed to, Daily Fantasy Insider before, sign up for free 30-day, trial. Use the promo code DAYFRIEND, and you'll get, free 30 days of the read-only content to all their sports. Sign up for the all access, and that gets you everything. Where if you just don't really want anything but MMA, just sign up for MMA for 30 days read-only, and you'll get all our content. Ryan, anything else you want to plug while we're here?
I mean, we didn't do it this week due to mainly the fact that, there really wasn't any fights that I thought was worth talking about betting wise. I think we'll normally keep, the fight forecast as a betting podcast for the most part. So definitely, subscribe to that as well on YouTube. And if we feel that there's enough fights to break down betting wise, we'll certainly do something like that beforehand, just quick sum. So certainly take a look and subscribe to that as well. Someone did just actually ask in the chat.
Yeah, popped it up. How to watch the fight?
I don't know if that's a real question or not, but I mean, if you do want to watch the fight, you have ESPN Plus. They do all the prelims and stuff like that. If you do want to pay for that. Which personally I think it's a great value. Outside of that, you have your streams and stuff like that. I'm not going to give any sites here because they're technically not 100% legal, but there's multiple sites if you Google it that you can find free streams on.
I haven't looked yet. Are the main fights on ESPN, or I didn't? I'm trying to look right now to see where.
The pay-per-view you have to order. You can order it through ESPN Plus, which.
Well, I'm talking about like even the undercard, all that.
Yeah, those are always on ESPN Plus.
Are they?
Yeah.
Is it on main ESPN, or is it on the main ESPN though? I think usually like the undercard, like the early prelims is ESPN Plus, or the early prelims is on ESPN2.
Oh, okay.
Prelims are even on ESPN2, and then the main card is pay-per-view.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I always watch it through ESPN Plus personally. So I mean, but if they are on ESPN2, there you go. You get the free prelims. Personally, I don't feel like this card is worth paying for, so I will be using one of those free sites online. But like I said, Google it, and or send me or Dave a DM on Twitter if you would like, and I will certainly tell you that site. But I'm just not going to let you. I'm not going to say it on stream.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same with Ryan. I'm not going to mention the names of sites that you can go watch these fights, but there are sites besides the normal paying platforms or just watching the undercard and prelims. But I think the main event is almost worth paying for the pay-per-view. But even that, I'm more than likely going to be going other routes to watch the fights. But thank you, Ray? I
Right.
don't even know if that's how to pronounce it, but thanks for the only question of the night. But again, thank you guys again for listening and watching the podcast, and we will see you next week.